what we've been exploring is the impact of the promenade work. That obviously came to light with people contacting us, and we were able to see that both myself and Mr. Robert Shaw cover Douglas East, where the promenade scheme lies, and have taken an active interest in that throughout. I've explored that as a scrutiny committee of Parliament, and that's very much something that is almost breaking new ground. It's something where we're looking at this as it's happening rather than looking back over the wreckage at the end of a project, and I think that's a very important aspect and angle that we're taking. In terms of a central projects unit, for us, that was very much something that we've been exploring, and that comes from the fact that when we've been exploring this scheme, trying to find an individual who really has a handle on all aspects of the scheme, not just the DOI angle, which there is people who are very much around the engineering and very much the detail on the ground, but also the Department for Enterprise angle, the Treasury angle, looking at the impact on businesses, the potential impact in the future, the planning of the project and how individual aspects would be undertaken. That would, for me, be where the central projects unit would come in. So it would not be a project manager within the department. It would be a project manager within the projects unit that sits above the department level, reporting directly to the National Strategy Group and COMIN, and able to make very clear decisions and is accountable to the whole of government. We're very much Parliament as a scrutiny committee, and we're exploring this from a Parliament, but this would be a government committee.
So it would be a team, a collaborative team then, not an individual?
I think it would need to have a number of people involved. Certainly, whether that's a case of some of the people already there reporting into someone who sits an overarching role, but it has to be in conjunction with the National Strategy Group. That's absolutely fundamental. This is not just an average roadworks project. The impact of this is far further afield. This has the potential to affect tourism for the whole of the Isle of Man for the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, because those bookings will be being made now. When people come, they come across this, they feel that they hadn't had the appropriate communication and ability to amend their schedules accordingly, they will act, and that will have a knock-on effect for years to come.
As a project which is currently sitting at about a 9 to 10 week delay, we're told there is a sort of, movability for that. And again, that counts for the budget as well. But creating another body, another work efforts, people's time, that surely would cost even more money to the project.
I think, yes, there's a potential that there would be a cost. I don't think these things come for free, but equally, I would argue that the cost of the delay, the cost of potential compensation on the project would actually be mitigated if you had someone who was coordinating, because I think those things would have been avoided. We're finding ourselves in a situation now where we have to absolutely look at compensation, and we're delighted the Treasury Minister's recognised, as we have, the lack of an overarching project unit that covers all of government rather than just DOI, and we now feel that will allow us to move our investigations towards the compensation, to how we support those businesses right now in the here and now. We've obviously put a call for evidence out. We're delighted. We've had a number of businesses already contact us, exploring and advising us they're going to be putting submissions in for their businesses, and that will allow us then to look further into how best to support those businesses.
I mean, you said before as well that, of course, this isn't your run-of-the-mill typical project that we see on the Isle of Man. In that case, shouldn't this have been a predictable issue coming up? The fact that businesses are going to need compensating, the fact that this project will need an overarching unit. Why have we got 10 months into the project to finally see that?
I couldn't agree more. I think that this was something that should have been recognised earlier. I think, certainly when DOI, they voiced that they felt they were able to do the project. I think they felt that they had all that in place. I don't think there was necessarily the awareness of quite the level of impact this was going to have, not just on businesses on the promenade on a day-to-day, but that forward-looking outlook very much around the next 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time. I think there's a real potential for a knock-on impact, and that comes at an overall cost to the island, certainly a cost to the businesses on the promenade, and to those individuals who, in many cases, this is something they have spent years building up to get their business up, and now it's just being lost overnight. We know that DFE have put a letter out to the business owners, but again, it's a generic "Dear business owner." It talks about growing their business actually in the scheme that they've come up for the promenade compensation scheme, and it's a 6,000 limit, and the reality is that that's just not going to be enough for a number of these businesses. And the other thing, which is a little bit of a slap in the face, I think, is that actually on the list at the back, they have to tick to say that their business is not at risk of closure in the next 6 months. And I think for some businesses, it would be very hard to say, hand on heart, actually everything's going swimmingly, because we only have to look at the promenade, the fact that people are avoiding it, and talk to some of these businesses who've been on certainly on shows on Manx Radio, discussing just how significantly their takings are down. So they're having to make an affirmative comment that I think would be very difficult for them to do in order to get a small amount of money that will simply allow them maybe to keep their head above water for a short period of time. And I think this deserves a far more rigorous exploration of compensation than a simple drop a letter through each door on the promenade scheme.
And so beyond the committee that you're sitting on scrutinising that's what you see the central projects unit doing as well?
So I think the central projects unit is something that will look at the actual day-to-day running of the scheme, the exploration and avoidance of potential further loss and damage to business by proper strategic oversight of this, and that would involve knowing where we're digging at which time, coordinating that with the key holiday seasons, understanding the demand levels and usage of the prom, and then the compensation scheme will have to be cross-departmental, but I would envisage to be a separate scheme.
And just finally, because we are short of time, I'm afraid, it is behind schedule. If compensation is to go to businesses potentially over budget, would you say there's a basic lack of organisation and management over this?
Yeah, I would say that has been, absolutely.
And would you, do you think it was the right call in appointing Alden Construction to do the prom contract? Of course, you said this is a big contract, unlike anything we've seen on the Isle of Man so far. Should it have been done by a bigger company from the UK?
I don't think it's necessarily about the person who was appointed. I think it's simply about that overarching oversight that appears to be lacking within the project.